In this video, we're going to look at the importance of effective communication. Previously, we looked at different types of communication, and now we'll take a look at the potential impacts of getting it wrong and the advantages to getting communication just right. Effective communication depends on the motivation of your listener. You can shout all you want, but it won't have any impact if people have switched off and if they don't want to listen to you. Communication needs to be clear and easily understood. It needs to be accurate, complete, and shared using the right method for the situation. In most circumstances, it's important to check that communication has been received and understood, and that feedback has been requested where needed. Not all managers do this, particularly if they are distant from the people in their teams. To all the teachers out there, show all of these videos without any ads and gain access to our growing library of over 500 teaching worksheets. Why not visit BizzWizard.co.uk to find out more? In this video, we're going to meet Miles Mayfield. Miles is the operations manager for Blue Vibes Festival, a blues and souls music festival held every year in the heart of Sussex. The festival has grown over the 10 years since it was first launched, and it now attracts over 25,000 visitors every year. The festival requires around 500 staff, everything from litter pickers to operations supervisors. Some of the staff employed by Miles have previous experience, but many of them are new to the job. As operations manager, Miles is responsible for making sure that all of the festival staff know what they need to do and that they do exactly what they need to when it's needed. Effective communication is absolutely critical for Miles, otherwise the festival could be a complete shambles. It's fair to say that Miles hasn't always got the right balance in the past. Before we take a look at why things were a little tricky for Miles way back then, let's have a look at what the impact of insufficient communication might be. Insufficient meaning not giving enough communication. If a manager does not communicate enough with the people in their team, they may become demotivated and unhappy. If there's insufficient communication, employees might lack the information they need to do their work, meaning the work might not get completed to the right standard, or it may even not get finished at all. It might mean that workers have to redo tasks because the communication wasn't clear, and if there's no opportunity to share ideas and get feedback, this can lead to inefficiency. Sometimes, if there isn't clear and effective communication from the top of the organisation, the rumour mill can take over, and this can lead to worries, which might be completely unnecessary. In the long run, if employees are demotivated because of a lack of communication, they may decide to leave and find a job elsewhere. There may be a loss of knowledge and experience to the business, and a cost to recruiting someone new. If this pattern repeats itself and staff turnover levels are high, then it could lead to the eventual failure of the business. Bring this video and over 100 more to life with fun, interactive games, quizzes, and case studies. Why not try the first 25 completely free by visiting BizzWizard.co.uk. So, back to Miles over at the Blue Vibes Festival. When the festival first started 10 years ago, unfortunately this was what happened to him. He gave insufficient communication to his team. He had never been responsible for communicating with such a large number of employees. He operated a very flat organisational structure, so he had a very wide span of control, and tried to manage everything himself. He made too many assumptions that everybody knew what to do and would just work out for themselves what was needed to be done and just do it. He ended up with a situation where too many staff were standing around at the festival, waiting to be told what to do, while the queues for the bar and the food stalls were building up, and complaints were flooding in from the festival goers. Staff were walking out because they felt they were being kept in the dark, and he had to spend lots of money bringing in replacements at the last minute. In the first year, the festival sadly ended up losing a lot of money. Miles realised that he needed to rethink his approach to communication. Each of the video courses over at BizzWizard.co.uk also includes an interactive business case study that applies the knowledge learned to a real-world scenario. There are over 1,000 multiple-choice questions, each with detailed feedback, which tests students' understanding of the content. Why not visit BizzWizard.co.uk to find out more? Now, you might think that there's no such thing as over-communication, that you can never have enough information. However, there is a negative impact of excessive communication. Too much can be just as bad as too little, especially when the message is important, as it just gets lost in all the other information. If a manager bombards their subordinates with information, it can really slow them down, as dealing with all of that information received can take up a large amount of time. They may end up feeling overwhelmed or, let's face it, just plain bored. It can also be difficult for employees to work out what is the most important or useful information within the communication that's being sent, and the team may end up missing important messages because they just get lost amongst everything else. As with under-communication, over-communication can increase staff turnover due to employees being demotivated and inevitably lead to good employees leaving, which is something that you always want to try to avoid. The following year, this was Miles's approach, that there's no such thing as over-communication. He issued every staff member with a briefing pack, detailing their exact responsibilities, and this was a definite improvement. He started holding staff briefings twice a day, and issued all staff with walkie-talkies so they could communicate with one another. Sounds good, but he didn't stop there. He sent hourly WhatsApp messages to all of the team with progress updates. He sent hundreds of emails a day to people who were in charge of food, sound, lighting, and the list went on. And he expected to get a reply to each email that he sent. It's fair to say that he went a little over the top. Miles's staff started to feel completely bombarded with the volume of information that he was sending their way. They felt like they were spending so much time dealing with all of Miles's communication that not everything was actually getting done, and key instructions were being missed. Although it was for a different reason, Miles found himself in the same situation, where staff were walking out as they just couldn't handle the situation. So, why are things not working out for Miles? Well, as we have already discussed, over-communication can be just as bad as under-communication, and it can lead to misunderstandings and therefore mean that mistakes are made and customers are unhappy. Miles needed to find the right balance with his communication, not too much, but also not too little. After spending some time thinking things over, Miles decided to make some changes at the beginning of the festival's third year. He decided to scale back on his communication, but really make sure that he was getting the essential information across to the right people, and using his supervisors to get the important messages out to other employees in their specific areas. Miles decided to get feedback and change the communication to two-way, as he realised that this feedback is just as vital as sending out his communication in the first place. He decided to only send twice daily updates to the whole team, summarising the information that they needed to know. Through trial and error, Miles got the balance right. The result is that his staff were much happier and now love working at the festival. Things generally happen when they are meant to, and the festival goers have a great experience. Each year he asks for feedback on the way that the festival is run, and he uses this to improve things from year to year. The festival became a real success, and it went from making a loss to being a highly profitable event. From a shaky start in the first couple of years, Miles has really nailed his communication strategy over the past decade. Miles is an example of a manager who has eventually got his communication just right. The impact of effective communication is that managers are achieving what they want to achieve and they have the buy-in from their staff. When a manager gets the balance right and communicates the right level of information to their subordinates, they are much more likely to have a happy and motivated workforce. The impact will be that the employees will work much more effectively and efficiently and are much more likely to complete their work on time, do a good job, and deliver a high-quality product or service. Morale and motivation will likely be high, leading to lower levels of absenteeism and increased staff retention. This will mean skills are not lost from the business and could even lead to lower costs of recruitment. If you get a question about effective communication, it's important to consider the impact that either too much communication or too little communication might have, and what the barriers to effective communication might be in that particular scenario. Remember to think back to Miles and the difficulties that he initially faced running the festival, and recommend making some of the changes that he made in an effort to improve communication. This has been the BizzWizard. See you in the next video.